Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. We see that we have people coming to us from the United States and Canada and Thailand and Korea, Australia, New Zealand, all over the world, and that's really an exciting opportunity that we're going to partake in today, receiving feedback and communicating with our communities sparse throughout the world. This live format presentation, I think, is a new and unique way that we can communicate to you and to us. So let's try to take advantage of it. We welcome any input that you have for us. Please send in your questions and we'll take some breaks throughout the presentation. And also if you have some general ideas for how these kinds of presentations can be more interesting, we're exploring different types of formats and different types of content, educational and entertaining. Today we have a range of different topics for you, mostly covering some aspects within the GE organization. But we'll be happy to take slight side tangents if you have any interesting topics that you'd like to bring up throughout. So the first thing I'd like to get started discussing is our annual reports, just to be sure everybody's aware. And don't worry, I won't be boring and actually sit here and talk in detail about the annual reports. But those of you interested, I wanted to be sure you were aware that GUE, Project Baseline, and also an exploration report exists in our annual reports page at GUE.com/about/resources. So you can go and learn a little bit more about the organization, some of our current activities. The exploration report, which I'll return to, is a really neat innovation by Mario Arena. He brought that forward and organized it from many of our communities around the world, and I'll talk a little bit about that later in this discussion. And as well, the Project Baseline is covering many of our Project Baseline-oriented activities throughout, and then the GUE annual report is covering the organization broadly speaking. So go check those out if you're interested. And then I'll move into my main body of the topic, where I want to talk somewhat around our three pillars: our education, our exploration, and our conservation pillars. And the education one will take a little bit more time because many of you are interested in that. Many of you are divers or instructors or active within the organization. And that was your entry point into the organization. And for many of you, even something that you're continuing to progress. Maybe it's your career or maybe it's a sort of passion of yours. So with our program development, I'd like to talk briefly about some of our sort of tech and cave activities, and then I'm going to bring Dorada in to give us an overview of our recreational program. So just a few top-of-the-line comments. Make sure that you're all aware we now have a new version of our GUE training standards. That's version 8. Thanks very much to Mark for his diligent effort in organizing that, sort of eliminating some of the inconsistencies, helping us call those out, and then as a group, many hours of work went into really trying to refine those standards year over year. So you can download those from the GE website as well. Those are easily located. Then we also have a new version of our standard operating procedures, our SOP document, and we're working on that even more elaborately, working on a new sort of dedicated rebreather version. Right now you have a sort of generic SOP document, which is starting to get pretty large. And that's available to all GUE members. So if you're a GUE member, you can find that in your resources section. Obviously, I'll mention a few times the importance of GUE membership to keeping the organization thriving and making possible the kinds of things that we are trying to organize within our classes and more broadly globally. I'd also like to make people aware that we have our new Tech 1 and Cave 1 presentations out. And for many of you GUE members, you have access to those through your membership benefits. Different classes of members have different access to different types of different numbers of presentations. So I encourage you to consider that, and then new students will be receiving those Tech 1 and Cave 1 presentations. We also have our Tech 2 and Cave 2 under instructor review, so most of that is ready for release. Edits are finished and it's more or less ready. We're just negotiating a few last points, so those will be forthcoming very soon. And then we also decided to take on a behemoth of a project sometime last year, and working on it now through into this year. We're trying to rewrite all three of our primary manuals, which are long overdue. So our Cave and Technical and Fundamentals books are all quite far along. Our Fundamentals book is now entering final edits so that it can go into layout. And our Cave book is quite close. It is now entering our editing phase. And then I'd say actually entering about a third in. And then our technical manual is just now starting. So hopefully if we remain diligent and all the working groups continue to progress, we'll be able to see those released during this year. So we're excited about that nice big push. We've also made some real progress in our recreational curriculum, which is an area I'm quite excited about. I think we can all acknowledge that new divers coming to the sport are really an important component to our development and success as an industry. And what we've always really strived to accomplish was trying to find a reasonable way to get those divers as trained as capably and safely as possible, and trying to find something that's attractive to them in terms of flexibility and format. And so Dorada has spearheaded an effort with our Rec 1 program, as well as some changes to our recreational curriculum. Rather than me prattle on, I'd like to give her an opportunity to come on, and we'll let her speak a little bit about some of those developments in the program. And after we come back, we'll go ahead and entertain some questions, so please go ahead and send those in during this time period so we can take our first round. So over to you, Dorada.
Hello everyone, nice meeting you all. For those who did not have a chance to meet me before, my name is Dorota and I'm an active GEOE instructor since 2006. Currently within GEOE, I act as a recreational administrator within our board of advisors. My responsibility there is to develop our recreational and foundational curricula and support GEOE instructors within those fields. What I would like to talk today is the recently refreshed GEOE entry-level courses, the Recreational Diver Level 1 program. The general purpose of the change was to make the training more accessible, allowing for staging the process and adapting it to the needs of future divers. The program is taught ideally over 6 days, but it can be run in 2 ways, where the first one, leading to the GEOE supervised diver, would be dedicated for students who need more time to master skills, have some time limitations, or simply prefer to initially dive under supervision rather than independently within a team. But after a while, where they gain more diving experience, they can finish all theory and in-water training and get certified as an autonomous diver, the Recreational Diver Level 1, the Rec 1 as we call it, which obviously can be done as well in one go, and that would be the second way. For those who already decided, dedicated and committed, yes, I want to do it. Well, now it is a purely recreational class, but it is still a GEOE class. So it is designed for those who are willing to commit to theory, practice and quality performance. As we know that achieving mastery and through it competence will not make them just divers, but divers for life. And to wrap it up, a diver will continue diving for his lifetime when he is having fun doing it. And this he can do when he is comfortable underwater. And that can be achieved not only by training, but by gaining experience, so by actively diving. So now, how does it apply to us? I mean, to me, to you, to all of us who are here today. So we all are already certified divers, and majority of us are GEOE divers, GEOE members, and are actively doing far more advanced dives than any recreational dive. So why I am talking to you now? You may assume more than correctly that recreational entry-level divers are important because they will be our successors in continuing the mission GEOE has an organization, and that GEOE diving will endure. But there are some more reasons. Well, in fact, for me, there are at least 3 reasons to talk about it. And I would even call them favors that I would like to ask you. So firstly, you are, as a GEOE trained diver, the best advocate for us. You have already done GEOE training, and from your own experience, you can tell how it developed you as a diver. A person who wants to start doesn't know what to choose, but you can tell why it is worth to take this path and why it is worth to commit to that excellence that we have on our GEOE membership t-shirts. So if you know someone who wants to start diving, and for sure you do, because being a passionate diver just makes you talk about it to everyone you meet, so explain why the dedication to training and persistence in practice will develop a diver that will enjoy diving and have great adventures underwater, and to be that diver for life. But now we can't learn diving by talking about it, and it doesn't matter how passionate you talk about it. So here comes my second favor. And it is quite simple, because I would like you to just go out and dive. Showcase yourself and GEOE dedication to developing capacity, to gaining experience, and through that, becoming better and more competent diver. Prove that there are indeed many opportunities to be involved and engaged in diving locally. Showcase our active GEOE communities, because we do have many in various parts of the world with various languages, cultures, various activities and dive opportunities. So dive, follow the adventure that made you start diving in the first place. Just inspire and motivate by example. And this ties to my third favor, because our newly certified GWE recreational diver will need your guidance and assistance to engage in diving. We believe that you, as a passionate and experienced GWE diver, can take an active role in developing our new generation of GWE divers. Just get to know them, get them involved in the activities of your local GWE community, being it a project-based land dive, a training dive, a fun dive, or even a diving trip to some other GWE communities. So for those who would like to engage in these apprenticeships, as I would call them, we decided to create a role of a GWE dive leader, where he or she would need to be an experienced GWE diver, and after completing a specific training related to rescue, control, and supervision skills, can become a certified GWE dive leader and help us in that development. So have a look at our recently released GWE standards. It's the 8.0 version that is available online now, where you can find the prerequisites and the development path for a GWE dive leader. So my three favors are out there now with you. And what I'm really asking for is simply to explain why you became a GWE diver, what you do as one, and how everybody can get involved. So I hope you will consider these favors of mine. And as for me, in the meantime, I will continue working on all of the other developments that we have in queue within GWE, and I hope we can show you soon exciting news coming up. And anytime, you can drop me an email at rec@gwe.com with any related or less related questions and feedback about all of the developments that we are doing. So thank you very much for today, and good diving.
Great, thanks very much, Dorada. We appreciate that update, and I hope all of you enjoyed hearing a little bit more about the Developing Recreational Program. Dorada and many others are working really hard to bring that to a reality. And I know that it's working really well in certain pockets around the world. Gideon, thanks for mentioning that it's working well in your region. I think that many of you who either have access to a shop or teaching or who are figures in your community can really help to promote that to the betterment of the industry. So I think if we can get a larger group of beginning divers who are having fun, enjoying themselves, diving safely, we can really make a very significant, incredible positive effect on the industry, which is really one of our prime organizational purposes. So we really would appreciate any of your assistance in that regard as well. Lots of positive comments in general. Very happy to see many of you using GWE TV in a good way. We're getting a lot of good feedback. We have a ton of content that we're still pushing through and organizing. We've got a number of different incentives for people to create content that we're nearing release on. And so we have big plans to develop that over a long period of time. So hopefully people will continue to join and subscribe so that we can maintain the momentum that we've already developed. So I'd like to talk a little bit about our continuing education side. I'd like to continue in this theme, and I want to talk a bit about the value of GWE training in a couple different directions. So mainly one of the first things I'd like to start with is I think we all value a high level of training and capacity, and that's a very important component to what we represent as an organization, and let's just say as a community. Even people that haven't been GWE trained specifically may well have a similar commitment to this kind of focused, rigorous capacity. One thing that we really wanted to avoid as a young GWE organization was the idea of people sequentially moving quickly through dive training classes. And so this is the reason that we created a break between programs, a minimum 25 dive just as a forced stop, but really encouraging people to do even more than that and to really focus on the diving. A lot of people tend to have a focus on looking at training more as an endpoint, and really training should be a means to the end, which is diving. And don't focus really on the training side and try to move through classes quickly so that you can get up to your level 2 or whatever program you want. Really, we would like to beseech you to take your time and spend some time actually diving and building your experience and building that within your communities. I think this is a really critical part where classes should not be looked at as sort of badges, but where we really look at the kind of diving that we're accomplishing in a really vibrant way. So please try to take that under advisement and consideration within your communities as you develop them. Our GUE training in general, if realized and built in the way that I'm discussing, can particularly be useful for us in a number of different ways. Of course, in an ideal world, it's really making you a lot safer and allowing you to have a lot more fun during your diving. And I think a lot of you are seeing that, which is one of the reasons that you're part of our community. On the other side, hopefully many of you are starting to see the value to joining different GUE projects, and we've been putting a progressively greater level of focus in this over the years and trying to create more and more opportunities. This is going to be more evident too if you look at our exploration report, which I'm going to come to in a moment. If you look at some of the project baselines activities that are going on around the world, not just the larger ones including subs and all kinds of activities like that, but broadly speaking, more importantly, the communities around the world that are engaged in Project Baseline. That's the core essential ingredient to the volunteer initiative that is Project Baseline. And all of these are important components that you can really facilitate through your training. And then, in addition, you can build a tremendous community through this training, through having a standardized approach to your diving, having a community that's on the same page, and really a clear awareness on everybody's part will really help to build a much more vibrant community. So if you're wondering about getting started, obviously our rec programs are an excellent entry point. Many of you entered through our fundamentals program, but I'd like to back up and say in some cases recreational program may actually be a better entryway. So for example, if you have a friend or you yourself or a diver with another agency with limited experience and you ended up in a class that was quite quick and short, even though you technically have an open water certification, our Rec 1 program is a very thorough class that might really benefit many people more so than trying to move on to an advanced stage. As we know, once we have that sort of fundamental platform developed, then we can see a lot better growth and a lot quicker development for people later down the road. And then, of course, our Rec 2 and Rec 3 programs are excellent entry points for many different divers of different disciplines. Of course, our fundamentals program is still vibrant, still one of our most popular classes, and so that remains an important gateway into the organization. And I don't foresee any significant changes to that reality anytime soon. And then I would also like to call out primers to various people in the communities. So these are opportunities to bring people in, for example, who are interested in working with a dry suit or a set of doubles. And these kinds of programs are really nice entry points, maybe in preparation for fundamentals or a Rec 3 or some other similar kind of class. So these would help people get started. If you're already in our GUE curriculum and you're active in that program, then I've already talked to you about trying to maintain your experience base and focusing on that over the rapid accumulation of dive training programs. One of the aspects to this is keeping skills current, and so I just want to cover a few ways that we might really focus on this goal. One of those is just your membership in the organization. A couple times I've mentioned different types of benefits associated with your membership, things like your SOPs, things like access to the current curriculum, or all of the curricula depending on your level of access, and then of course broader support so the organization has the ability to bring out additional tools, things like GUE TV. Really, especially in the beginning, are really started with GUE resources and then become self-sufficient over time. But these kinds of things are key ingredients that we can't really develop as an organization without your support. So if you are a member, thank you very much for your support. It's critical to our mission and to the things we're trying to accomplish. And if you're not, please give it some consideration. Visit the website and see. Another asset that we would consider towards your keeping skills current is our conference. So we run a biannual conference. We're running one this year now in October in High Springs, and we hope you'll come and join us. It gives you an opportunity for diving, meeting a lot of active explorers around the world, many unique presentations and workshops, everything from freediving oriented workshops and lectures all the way through aggressive technical projects and exploration activities. So it's going to be a great conference, and we really hope you'll consider visiting us there. We've talked a lot about, or several times at least, about DiveGUE.tv, so I won't spend a ton of time here, but I think it's an important way for you to maintain your currency and to maintain an awareness of developing skills. So we are actually in the process now of getting started with some additional CCR skills. We have some more things to film across the spectrum, cave diving skills, CCR skills. All of these kinds of things will be additions to our GUE TV location and allow you to maintain currency, learn something new, and really stay in tune with what's going on in the community. Then I'd also like to call out the possibility to use your renewal period as a diver or even as an instructor to ensure that you're in keeping with the active and comfortable level of diving skill. If you feel less so, if you feel like you may be getting a little bit rusty, then I would ask you to, or encourage you at least, to look at coaching opportunities. So in this way, you could hire an instructor for a day or even a half a day and really get a tremendous amount of value. And then last, but certainly not least, our team diving and review capacity that's a mainstay of our dive training programs is something you should all be benefiting from in your local communities. So make sure that your dive buddy or your dive buddies are working together in a positive, proactive way. You can be friendly and courteous. You don't have to be as mean as some of those instructors, but you can be courteous in your review, discuss with each other things that weren't clear, learn how to make things better as you dive, and ultimately this sort of constant self-improvement will make everybody in the team much better for the process. So I think that covers our basic staying current and hopefully refocuses some people on their dive training. I've mentioned a few program development aspects, but I'd like to also reiterate a couple new ones that are coming down the road this year. Our Science Diver program, which has really been a big focus, really spearheaded by Diego. Thank you very much for that effort. A lot of work by Sam and Fritz as well. And so the Science Diver program sort of takes the Doc Diver foundation and brings it to another level. We've learned that with many of the different science and archaeological programs we have going on around the world, for example, we have a vibrant and dynamic project in Fiji right now, which I'm going to come to in a second. And these kinds of projects really require a pretty substantial capacity and a growing amount of need for scientific documentation ability. So I think the Doc Diver class still sort of represents an excellent starting point. It's still a tremendously valuable class for individuals covering the sort of broad view. The Science Diver program is really going into more detail, covering the spectrum, everything from sort of science, ethics, QA, QC, all the way through different types of more detailed interrogation and documentation strategies. And this is important because of some of our growing collaborations with different universities and governments around the world, a couple of which I want to talk about in a second. And then this year at our GUE conference in October, we've got some working sessions organized, and we've already started the drafting of our Level 3 programs, which we really plan to release next year. And we've been talking about them for a long time. We started with them in the beginning, and we did teach some years ago. And then really the audience wasn't there, and our focus with other priorities wasn't there. And so now we're excited to really be focusing on that later this year for development into next year. We've got a nice working group, and there are a number of people really excited and committed. And the Level 2 divers around the world are significant enough so that such a program becomes more and more interesting. And finally, that becomes a critical element given the number of growing, significant, sort of high-end exploration type projects that we're developing globally. Those are going to continue to grow, and so having a base of individuals that are capable and ready to support that is an important component. So I'd like to move now into exploration. This is an area I've touched on a few times, but I'd like to talk about it in a bit more detail. I will call out again the exploration report, which you can find at your resources section under the GUE.com about. And I encourage you to go and look at some of the neat projects going on around the world. That's by no means an exhaustive report, but it's a pretty reasonable representation of the many exciting activities that are occurring globally. And I'd like to pull just two out of those projects that I've been pretty heavily involved in which I think help to frame the need for things like Level 3 programs and the Science Diver program. I think some people tend to get anxious when they see a growing number of classes, including myself, to speak frankly. I'm constantly aware of the reality of not trying to create a number of classes just to create a class. But I really think that when we see a specific need, like for example the Science Diver class, in some cases some of the primers, I think it becomes a pretty important component. I don't know how to tell somebody, no, we can't teach you to use doubles any more than I know how to tell an elite university that we don't have people that have enough scientific knowledge to be as useful as possible in an elaborate project that we're conducting globally. So the two that I'd like to talk about are the NOAA work that we've been doing and the work that we've been doing principally with the Superintendent of the Sea, which is the sort of conservation body of the Sicilian government. So first with NOAA, for those of you not aware, NOAA is the National Oceanic Atmospheric Association. It's by far the largest behemoth government organization in North America. The ship she was engaged in battle with is only a few hundred meters away. And so working together with private sponsors and government resources, we were able to help NOAA conduct the first thorough 3D imagery of that wreck, while also working on other wrecks in the region. And now we're organizing another trip, probably for the end of this year, to try to expand upon that documentation effort. And so many of the things that we're trying to develop with NOAA, in some cases where there are larger projects like that, do of course require private support. And I want to take a moment actually to talk briefly about something to reassure people who are members in the organization or considering donations or considering membership. When you see these glitzy projects that are occurring, for example, we have one going on in Fiji, the ones in North Carolina, the Mediterranean projects that we did a couple years back. It's easy to imagine that GUE membership money is being used to sort of pay for ridiculously expensive ships and subs. And I assure you that's not at all the case. So for example, if I take this example in Fiji, we currently have a series of donors, particularly one donor who has donated significant resources to the organization to allow for that project to occur, including ship and sub and crew, and also a donation to the organization generally. And so these kinds of projects are critical because they allow the organization to bring a range of university professors and researchers in various regions. And typically those private donations are tied to a particular kind of project. So it's not really like somebody says, here, take this donation and do whatever you want. It's more an area of an interest for a particular group or person, and they have a particular interest in supporting our goals in that region. And so that's what we're doing in Fiji, and we're really excited. We've got a crew there over the last 2 weeks, which many of you might have seen updates on the Project Baseline website. Similar initiatives have occurred in the past. This is similar kind of partnership with NOAA, and so these kinds of things are occurring pretty regularly, and you should not imagine that those are taking your $29 and paying for the submersible, or hopefully your higher level of membership as well. So another project I'd like to discuss a bit, which is supported really just through the people who join the project. So this is a very common model for us in Italy. The archaeological projects that we conducted in Lipari over several years, I think 4 years in Lipari, and now we've moved down off the coast of Sicily, off Favignana. And in these regions, the participants are really the vehicle by which we can organize those projects. We are talking about trying to find a way to get enough sponsorship to bring the ship and subs to these regions. I think Favignana would be an amazing opportunity for that, but that's very much separate. So only if a private donor were interested in supporting that project would we try an endeavor of that nature. In these projects, the many dedicated GUE divers are coming, and they're paying to carry the trip forward. They're coming and doing a tremendous job working with us and technically for the Sicilian government in the location identification, preservation, and in some cases artifact recovery in these amazing and dynamic areas. And off the coast of Favignana, this project is really exciting to me because it's really a history-shaping event that occurred back in 241 BC. And this, originally, many of you may be aware, during the Punic War, Carthage, part of Africa, had superior naval capacity and so was really leading the way in naval battle. And the Romans were quite behind, had much better land troops, but were not able really to compete effectively. And this Battle of Ugalde off the coast of Favignana in 241 BC was a point at which the Romans had significantly enough developed their naval fleet that they were able to surprise the Carthaginians and ultimately defeat them in a decisive battle, really reshaping that aspect of our historical, especially when we speak from the Western history perspective. And so it's interesting to imagine if those kinds of events had not occurred, what would our lives be like? I think fairly different in maybe very unpredictable ways. But the neat thing about this location is that battle alone had roughly 400 ships, something on the order of 80 of them sunk. And so you have this huge area of massive archaeological significance with Roman helmets and all kinds of artifacts, the most interesting of which is the Roman rams that have been located in this region, carrying the majority of rams in the world. As I remember, something like 2/3, I think there's something like 13 rams out of 18 rams in the world. So this region is amazing. And when you see one of these rams, just generally, I think you can appreciate it. But when you see one up close and personal, it's really just it's difficult to really express the kind of feeling that brings. looking at something, an implement of war from more than 2,200 years ago. So really quite cool to think of the significance of that, and also the ships that probably lie near one another in that particular region. So we're organizing another project to document and hopefully find new Roman rams, helmets. I'd love to find a Roman sword. I think the shields might be a bit difficult, possibly even some wooden remnants of a Punic boat or something along those lines. They have found things buried under the mud in the past, so that always remains a possibility. So we're excited about that project. You can contact GUE for more information about it. It's up on our website as well. So hope maybe we'll see some of you there for that project and many of the others that we're developing around the world. So I'd like to move now into our conservation side, and I'd like to talk a little bit about Project Baseline, but more broadly I'd like to try to rephrase this a little bit, because I think through our own fault perhaps Project Baseline has confused some people within the GUE community looking as a sort of independent initiative. And we are taking more progressive steps to make that process more clear. In the foundation of Project Baseline as an initiative, we really hope that more groups from around the world might be part of that effort. And realistically, very few have, although we haven't given up. So we have taken on other partners that are not GUE oriented, and we will always support those, and we will continue to try to develop those kinds of relationships. But the reality is that it's GUE's signature conservation initiative. And so we put most of our conservation-oriented energy into Project Baseline. We do like to pursue other things and maintain openness about that. So, for example, we love to support sort of the ghost net problem, which is going on around the world and being managed by many of our communities. Things like beach cleanups and trash pickups and reef check support, and some of these kinds of things may not be sort of an intimate part of Project Baseline, but they are sort of spokes of that same wheel. And what I'd like us to do, I'd like to try to get you to look at Project Baseline in the same way I do, which is sort of the center point or the nexus around which the entire GUE organization is based. So when I think of Project Baseline, I actually really just think of GUE and its principal organizational purpose, which was to develop enough capacity, usually through enhanced training and additional diving skills and teamwork, to develop that significant capacity and leverage our excitement, enthusiasm, and capacity for exploration towards the realization of a way to protect and conserve the aquatic environment. And that's a big part of my early interest in the cave diving environment, to leverage our skills and capacity to explore places people hadn't been, to document those places, and then ultimately cultivate a set of data in support of conservation of that resource. And so Project Baseline is a very natural outgrowth of that, and that's what really got Todd Kincaid and I very excited about Project Baseline from the early days, because we saw this as a tremendous way for all communities to really realize that vision themselves in each of their local areas. So I could probably talk about this forever, and I'm tempted to, but I realize it's late in many parts of the world, and I know Todd tends to run on, and I want to give him a few minutes since I promised. So let's bring in Todd, our director of the Project Baseline initiative, as well as our vice president of GUE organization, and let's just hear a few words from him before we start to wrap up this discussion. And remember, after Todd comes back, I will take some of your questions or address some of your comments, so keep that in mind. Todd, you got a second? Why don't you take us through?
Hey JJ, thanks for the opportunity to talk about Project Baseline. As most of you know, we started Project Baseline in 2009, so this is our 8th year of operation, and I think we've reached a milestone in the evolution of our program. We now have over 80 teams in 27 countries that are actively working to document sites, and I think it's time. Well, most of us think it's time that we take the next step to where we continuously engage with conservation and research entities in a more direct and meaningful way. So basically what that means is that we're looking for ways to get all the information that our teams are collecting into the hands of people that can use it to actually create and foster conservation activities. So our focus right now is going to be on cultivating these bigger collaborations. We've started working with the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. That's the U.S.-based government entity focused on ocean science. otherwise known as NOAA. We've done 2 major projects with them now. One was aboard Baseline Explorer, focused on the USS Monitor National Marine Sanctuary, and then another one we did later on with just a dive team up in Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary. The goal there is essentially going to be to set up an opportunity for GOE, Project Baseline divers, to come out and join NOAA at all of the National Marine Sanctuaries around the world to document and establish baseline conditions. Another project or another effort that we've really advanced is collaborations with private entities. Last year in Bermuda, we did almost a month-long project with a charitable organization from the United Kingdom that has set up a global priority now that they're focused on developing an index for ocean health. So we did a project with them, again leveraging Baseline Explorer and the submersibles to bring scientists and multiple different collaborators together from both academic and government institutions internationally to focus on setting baseline conditions for the reefs in Bermuda. So now, I think that program, we can evolve that to work more closely, instead of always using Baseline Explorer, leverage other vessels as well. So we're really excited to get a new project off the ground here this year, where we're working with a private owner of a large vessel, and we're going to be doing a project in Fiji, where we're bringing scientists from the United States and of course from Fiji together to focus on, again, establishing baseline conditions for the reefs and coral ecosystems in Fiji. My hope is that these two efforts, our work with governments and like NOAA and private entities, are really going to grow our opportunities, not only on expeditions, but to get the information that all of our teams are collecting around the world into the hands of people that we can collaborate with more directly.
Greetings all, welcome back. It's great to have you back. I'm sure some of you are getting tired, especially in Korea. It's getting pretty late over there. So we'll try to be efficient. We're almost finished up. I just had a few closing thoughts. Thanks so much for all your positive comments and the time that you've invested coming to join us. I'd like to keep these relatively efficient and do them from time to time, somewhat periodically, and particularly based on your feedback and any suggestions that you have. As these come forward and you find things that are interesting and useful for you, we'd be happy to do more of them. We just like to keep them something interesting and unique for people. A couple questions people asked about. Steve, the primer materials are in development, and I'm told that we're looking at a summer release. So try to be patient. They are in development along with a few other things, but they are moving along and making good progress. Leo, thanks for the question about side mount. We're working on some beta programs this year. In fact, over the next few months, we should have some beta programs being taught. And so we really hope to make that possibility available to people sometime in the very near future. I won't commit to a date yet, but we are making good progress. And then Omar, about the apps. We have started many times down the road of building apps, but the problem is ultimately many people who are doing this for a living have volunteered resources, and then understandably they just get busy with the life that pays them. And we've never really been able to justify it as a primary expenditure for a nonprofit, especially based on maintaining it and maintaining it through time with different iterations and apps for which phones. I know all the Mac enthusiasts are saying, is there anything else but an iPhone? But there are multiple platforms and updates. So we're always open to it, and we have discussed it a number of times. And it's something that I would like to see, but at the moment I couldn't make a commitment. And then by discussion board, I believe you mean sort of like a forum type discussion board. And we have had that a couple times, but it really just never gets used. And so in the end, we left the last one sort of over several, 3 to 5 years, I think at least. And with such little use, it just didn't make sense to continue to support it. It seems like most people are really moving over even to Facebook as opposed to some of these different community bases. So I welcome any changes or ideas, or those of you who might have a particular kind of expertise in a given area, like the app world. If you have any ideas that the organization might be able to utilize, we're very open to that. We really would love to pursue anything that's interesting to our community. We just have to sort of pick and choose with limited resources which kinds of things we're going to put the most energy into developing. So as we wrap up, I want to thank you again from across the world. It's pretty neat to look at all of you from various places in the world. Please be sure to send in any suggestions or ideas. If you're watching this in recorded format, please don't be shy. Still go ahead and send in your suggestions. We'd love to see them. Those of you asking about the conference, I know that some of the troops back at headquarters are available now. You can just email them or message them and get some information about lodging and about joining the conference. We're really hoping to see you there. We've got a great agenda scheduled, and lots of people are planning to join. So hopefully you can make the long trip or the short trip, depending on where you are. But either way, hope you enjoy the rest of your day or get some sleep, and be sure to mail us or message us or carrier pigeon us if you have any great ideas for the next presentation. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, and take care all.